Good morning, everyone. We are Valeria, Righi, and Xavier Basagaña. We are part of the Cities Health Project, which is using citizen science to study the link between the urban environment and health. And we'll be chairing this session that is devoted to citizen science initiatives around the topic of health and well-being. You know that there is SDG 3, which is about ensuring healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. But actually, there are other SDGs that have a strong link with health and well-being, such as SDG 1, ending poverty, SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, or SDG 13 on climate action, just to cite a few, although we could easily find other connections. So actually the topic of health and well-being is very, very important for the SDGs.
So today we have 5 presentations on citizen science initiatives covering a wide variety of issues related to health, including healthcare solution, well-being of patients, accessibility of medicine, environmental exposure, and genomic research. And overall, these projects show that citizen science in the health domain can be a key instrument for addressing pressing social issues. I'm welcoming all our speakers. Thank you very much for being with us. We hope you will enjoy the presentation. And we organize the session so that speakers will do a 8-minute presentation that will be followed by a very quick round of question and answer. Please write your question on the chat, and Xavier and I will pick 1 or 2 questions and will address to the speakers soon after their presentation. And let's start immediately. Teresa Dechamps and Isabelle Dechamps and Teresa Schäfer from the Careables project will open the session with an example of how citizen science approach can be applied in the development of new inclusive healthcare solutions. Isabelle is one of the project lead from careables.org from the team in Berlin. She presents on behalf of the organization Prototype for Europe. And Teresa is a researcher at the Center for Social Innovation in Vienna. Her work focuses on citizen science, participatory design, and evaluation processes in social innovation. Please, Isabelle and Teresa, the floor is yours.
Now I'm unmuted. Hello from our side. We are very happy to be here and to speak about how to engage citizen science in co-creating open source healthcare solutions. As you have heard, we are both working for the project Careables, which is about co-creating open source hardware for health and well-being. So we are an EU-funded project and also a growing network of people from all different backgrounds that work on this on different co-creation formats since 3 years. And we want to give you a little hint or a bit of more tangible insight by showing you a video from one of our formats that we have been running in Berlin, which was about co-creating open source healthcare. It's from the Open Health Academy. Sorry, now there's a problem. That we have been running in the TU Berlin. And let me try to start the video.
Was ich hier super cool finde, ist, dass es nicht profit-, sondern werteorientiert ist und man tatsächlich einfach das Leben von Menschen verbessern kann.
Willkommen zur Open Health Academy!
Wir entwickeln in kleinen Teams Hilfsmittel und Lifehacks, die das Leben wirklich einfacher machen.
Von der Idee bis zum funktionierenden Prototyp.
So, zum Beispiel fährt jetzt Fahrrad. Und? Macht Spaß, Sven?
Ja, total.
Was auch Spaß macht? Unsere Lösung, mit der jeder Rolli zum E-Roller-Rolli wird.
Man muss es einfacher machen.
Und wenn es dann funktioniert, machen wir es für alle zugänglich.
Nachbaubar.
Open Source für alle.
Außergewöhnlich, oder?
Zusammen mit Jonas, Assi, Rike, Tobi, Adina, John, Robert, Maike, Mervin, Anastasia, Flo, Daniel, Dejan, Sven, Maggie, Lena, Thomas, Ferdi, Bea, Ian, Isa, Raul. Und in diesen Werkstätten und Fab Labs kann wirklich jede Idee zur Realität werden.
Hier ist viel Platz für außergewöhnliche Innovationen.
Neben Workshops und Vorträgen kann man ja auch einfach richtig geile Sachen ausprobieren, wie einen 3D-Drucker oder Löten oder sowas.
Das wird richtig cool!
Es macht total Sinn, ein Produkt zu entwickeln mit der Person, die es auch benötigt.
Endlich mal ein Projekt, wo du nicht überlegst, irgendwie, was soll das Ganze eigentlich, sondern
einfach Sachen machen.
Du hast keine Lust, Ideen für die Schublade zu entwickeln? Dann mach doch bei uns mit.
Ich finde die Open Health Academy deswegen so großartig, weil sie zeigt, wie lame die Industrie ist. Es kann doch eigentlich nicht sein, dass Hobby-Produktentwickler sich bessere Ideen überlegen, als das, was ich in jedem Sanitätshaus finde.
Yeah, so as we see in this video with the examples of designing a customized bicycle for Sven who has spasticism, or to build an adapter to use e-scooters, which was built on the idea of Adina and her cousin, who are both wheelchair users. Careables is not just a project, it's also a definition of a new category of products, and they are always co-created with those who are in need. They are replicable, so also adaptable, and you can make them in a makerspace, and they are open and documented, so everybody can use them, use the blueprints, and build them themselves.
So what we do in Careables is that we have this kind of co-creation programs, as you have just seen in the video, where we try to get together people with specific health needs and others that would support them to create such personalized careables. And then we also have a platform where these products or careables are shared with others to be replicated. And then we do consulting on how to set up these kind of processes to spread them more widely around, ideally the world. What we will focus on here in the presentation is this co-creation process, because one of the aims of the project was not only to find out, does this work and what is the outcome and what are the benefits for people and the drivers, but also how would we set up this co-creation process of creating these careables. And Isa, could you change the slide, please? So we have set up different co-creation programs in 3 different countries, in Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands. And we had a variety in length. So for instance, we had formats that were lasting over several months, but also a format that lasted only 10 days, like in a summer school format. We got together people working on the careables. And we had a variety of offline and online formats. So for instance, we started rather with face-to-face formats where like people met for months, once a week, and worked together on careables. For instance, you can see the pictures here on the left. There's this lightning cane. This was one of these where people really met and worked together. But then there was the COVID situation, and we had to move more and more to the online world. So our last format, for instance, was a format where people really started to create their teams and set the idea and define the requirements and so on, all in the online world without ever having seen them. And there was only at the very end the invitation to meet and really work on the prototypes and than really have a face-to-face event if it was possible. So we have really different formats. We tried out different things, and what we did then is we tried to summarize our learnings and created a training kit to really hand our lessons learned to others who want to try that out. And this is the next slide.
Shall I take over? The link to the training kit, we will also show it in the end, and maybe we can post it in the chat. We wanted to share a few of our learnings here, and of course, probably many of you who are practitioners themselves know that there are 3 main phases to a project, and they are all equally important. They need a lot of preparation, also a bit of flexibility, as we see in the organization for this conference, for example. Which is the preparation phase, the phase of the actual design process, where we were guiding people through design processes, where we had a lot of workshops, and also the 3rd phase of reflecting on the series and documenting it. And now I want to dive in a little bit into the co-creation process, or the 2nd phase of the actual process. As a blueprint, we have used a lot of methodology from design thinking in our projects, and we were running projects that were always based on like these 6 phases, starting with presenting challenges from users together with the users and to brainstorm on solutions, going over like a research phase where first prototypes would be made in order to understand the user's needs. Then a lot of prototyping to get the final concept, and of course then documentation and presenting. And as we did that, we of course also learned a lot. And in the first part of understanding the users, it was very important to us to really have users on the team and be really part of the project. Maybe I hand over to you with the learning, Teresa, here already. We are running out of time.
Okay, yeah, users in this case are the ones that need the careable, are really important, but often they are in a difficult health situation, as you could imagine. So we had to find also ways on how to define requirements for the prototypes without having always the user on board, like personas and so on. Then we would go to the next slide.
Yeah, in the 2nd phase, which is about prototyping, ideating and testing after having understood the user needs with first prototypes, it's really on digging in deeply on making a functional artifact. And often that takes actually quite a range of prototypes and an evolution until things really work. And we experience that especially in this intense phase, it is important to find a stop at some point and move over to the next phase of sharing. But before that, we want to share our learnings from the prototyping.
Yeah, what we learned is that prototyping needs to start quite early, that people don't run into a one-way that doesn't lead them to somewhere. So really getting very quickly to the hands-on sessions and working with the users on very easy prototypes and getting more and more detailed was one of the key things, which became complicated when we moved to the online world. So then you have to think about formats that people that can meet can try to start prototyping, or how could you start prototyping even when being separated from the user. So we shared it then in our training kit as well.
Yeah, and nothing is known and can be reproduced if it's not shared. Therefore, our programs have a big focus in the end always on documenting with a good storytelling, video making, and also having a hands-on documentation online, as you can see here in the example of the picture.
Yes, and of course the documentation was not always the thing that people love to do most, but we also learned that all this program around the creation of the careables, like doing the doku, having sessions where everybody meets online was very important to get the community together and also to trigger the teams to continue working on that. So we learned that it needs also a structured program that is more than just getting the teams together, but giving them the lessons on design thinking, initiating events where all teams members meet and so on, and get also feedback on all their great ideas and all the great work. And what was the outcome so far? We have identified a huge range of careables. We have been really surprised how many different ideas were there for these handmade, personalized health devices. And we just have some on the pictures here. And so far we have 180 careables documented on our platform to be replicated. And we have learned from the users how much that supports their health and well-being. But there are also other outcomes that we learned, like this mutual learning from each other, empathy, empowerment of the users or the people with the health needs, and also the satisfaction from working in this kind of projects. But of course, there's always, so this is the team behind, and we are nearly finished, Xavier. Yeah. Give us 30 seconds. One main issue is always the sustainability of these kind of approaches, and we are also trying out different ways on how to keep that sustainable. And this is where we want to end, finally.
Yeah, we have brought one last careables example, which is the Gleeful. We are starting a Kickstarter campaign these days. It's a project started by Together to Go and Open Dot, our partners in Italy, and it's an adjustable device for helping kids with motoric difficulties to draw and write. And it's a perfect example for a careable because it has been designed by by a team of people with very different backgrounds, and it's been redesigned again and again, and this is the latest version that we are now bringing out. So please support our Kickstarter campaign. Should also share the link here. Yeah, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabelle and Teresa, for this very interesting presentation on this very, very interesting project. Unfortunately, we have exceeded our time, also the time for questions. There are some questions in the chat box that actually some of them you partly addressed them in the last slides, but I think what we can do is maybe if you want to address those questions on the chat, but we'll have to move over to the next presentation in the interest of time. So thank you again for the presentation.
Thank you.
And we'll move to the next talk, which is on patient science by Nils Heyen, who is a sociologist and works as a senior researcher and project manager in the business unit innovations in the health system at the Fraunhofer Institute for Systems and Innovation Research in Karlsruhe, Germany. So Nils, whenever you want.
Yes, can you hear me and do you see my slides? Just check.
Yes.
Yes, cool. So yeah, thank you very much. I would like to present to you a new citizen science approach, which we call patient science. And to start with, I want to introduce to you the pilot project using the example of cystic fibrosis. I will then in a second stop try to show the usability of the results for health politics, patient care and self-help, and at the end I reflect on some benefits and challenges of this patient science approach. And just to give you an idea what our starting point was, that was back in 2016, and we observed that at that time hardly any citizen science activities in medical or health-related research existed. And usually patients just serve as test persons or as data sources, and our basic idea was to really, first of all, set up a citizen science study in the health sector, but also to try to really achieve the highest level of participation for citizens or for the patients. We choose rare diseases as field of investigation because we expected here to have highest possible impact. And we choose cystic fibrosis as our case for pragmatic reason, because there are very well-established self-help structures in Germany. And this is quite helpful for such a co-creation project we had in mind. So then we got the funding by the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research in the Citizen Science Funding Program and started in 2017. The project will end at the end of this year. And apart from Fraunhofer ISI, where I work, our partners are the University Hospital at Frankfurt, the Australia University of Applied Science, and the German Cystic Fibrosis Association. And there's one very important thing I want to stress at the very beginning, because as we applied for the funding, we didn't have the research question yet. So we really said in our proposal that we want to do that together with the citizens and the patients. And we only said that our first aim is that we want to do research into an essential problem in the everyday life of CF patients, but we didn't specify how or which one exactly. And our second aim was also to explore this approach and to identify the benefits and challenges of patient science. So then we, first thing to do was to set up a patient science team, and this included 12 patient scientists, as we call them, that are patients and also parents of CF-affected children, and also 8 professional scientists, social scientists, but also doctors and healthcare providers. And in a co-creation 2 days workshop process, we came up with our research topic and research question. We decided not to dig deep into one specific everyday problem, but to systematically map and measure all typical and all most important everyday problems of the patients and their relatives, and to analyze these with regard to the need for support and guidance for the people affected. And just to give you an idea how diverse these everyday problems can be, there are here listed are 19 everyday problems clustered to 5 fields, and they can concern things like living and housekeeping or social life and leisure, mobility and travel, also education and training, employment, school, and professional care and self-treatment. So it's very, very diverse. And we as a patient science team also then choose the methodology and decided to do a standardized online survey of the German CF community. That was last summer. We had a very long questionnaire, that's why we were even luckier or even more lucky to see that we got a very high response rate, 902 completely filled out questionnaires, which is like, that means that we could include more than 10% of the estimated 8,000 affected persons in Germany, which was a great success for us. And what we got as a feedback from external experts and professionals so far was, among others, that we did ask the right relevant questions. That's what they said, and that finally now the community has the scientific empirical evidence for many problems in everyday life with CF, and some of them were well known before, but there were only the anecdotes kind of evidence, and now they have data, and this, they say, it's quite helpful for all activities in CF-related health politics, patient care, and self-help to improve life situations of the affected people. And just to give you an idea or to illustrate this, I picked here some of our results. For example, we found that CF patients often feel embarrassed at work or at school while carrying out the therapy, for example, if they have to inhale. And then they skip parts of the planned therapy. And okay, it's clear that all have to think, all responsible decision makers have to think about how to improve the conditions regarding room, social understanding, and support to deal with that challenge. Another thing is that CF patients often have a low budget for subsistence, and at the same time have an extra CF expenditure of about 200 euro per month. So we also have to think about better financial support, at least for patients with low income. Another example is that many children and also adult patients are not fully adherent, and that means they do not carry out the therapy as it was actually planned with the physician. So we also have to think about better strategies to support patients in following their therapy properly. And also many patients and relatives have at least sometimes in their lifetime a feeling of overstraining themselves. And this is also a point that in patient care, they need to think about having more time and then greater focus on mental health in their processes. And just finally, some challenges and benefits of the patient science approach. I mean, one very important challenge is the cooperation of professional scientists and patient or citizen scientists. The challenge here is to find a balanced form of involvement, which gives the patient scientists as much responsibility as possible, but also as much support as necessary, so they are able to participate in the entire research process as reliable and responsibly as possible. You also have the high coordination effort, of course, in such a co-creation process. You also face a limited engagement and commitment of patient scientists very often because they have a limited resilience. I mean, they suffer acute phases of their illness. They have to stay at home. They have to stay at hospital, and that affects, of course, the project management. So you have to deal with that. Also, the co-equal relationship between professional and patient scientists we try to achieve is a challenge. I mean, you have to think about the appropriate frame conditions, about expectation management, the different roles, and so on. And another challenge we faced is, even before the corona pandemic, that our patient scientists had a mutual infection of a mutual risk of infection, so they couldn't meet face to face. So that means we couldn't, as a whole patient science team, we couldn't meet face to face, which was not very easy to develop a team feeling or feeling of cohesion within our patient science team. And there's also, especially for the patient scientists, the challenge to be not biased by being affected and to do their co-researcher role. And finally, the benefits of the patient science approach we see. I clustered them here along the 3 dimensions of the citizen science evaluation framework by Kieslinger and colleagues. There's on the one hand here the scientific dimension. Here the most important point is the inclusion and systematic use of an otherwise excluded expertise, and this expertise we call patient expertise. On everyday life and coping with the disease, they automatically somehow bring this expertise with them. And due to that, we would argue the entire epistemic process becomes a different one, namely more holistic, more robust, and also with regard to the target group, more in line with their needs and closer to the reality of their lives. True, on the participant dimension, you have the benefits like the empowerment effect, but also learning effects regarding science and citizen science, and also regarding the disease in focus. And on the socio-economic or political dimension, we would say that due to this included patient expertise, you get an especially high practical relevance and real-life value of the results. You also get new opportunities for exchange between patients and healthcare providers, and also among patients themselves. And also healthcare providers experience a change of perspective by practicing a co-equal attitude towards patients, which many of them are not used to, we would say. And then I come to the final slide. In our view, the most important added value of this patient science approach is the systematic use of the patient's expertise in the research process. And then only then you get the key benefits that are highlighted here on this slide. And at the same time, this points to a limit of the approach, because we would say that it makes little sense if the inclusion of the patient's expertise is not relevant to the epistemic interest at hand. So if it does not make an epistemic difference, then you still get the benefits not highlighted on this slide, especially on the participant dimension. But these benefits, we would argue, are not sufficient to justify the additional effort it certainly needs to successfully conduct a patient science project. And yeah, I hope I am somehow still in time. And I don't know whether we still have time to share one question.
Thank you, Nils, for this very interesting talk. There are some, maybe we can address one of the questions that is, well, so how can you make sure that your results flow into day-to-day medical care?
Yeah, that's, I think the answer is in our partners. I mean, we have the University Hospital and also the self-help organization for this disease in Germany. And they are engaged in so many different working groups and in contact with political decision makers, with networks of healthcare with regard to this disease. And they have long lists of plans how they will now take these results and make the best out of it to improve things. Yeah, they just have a lot of ideas how they can use it.
Okay, thank you. There may be some other questions in the chat that you may address directly there because we're a bit behind. So we'll move to the next session. Thank you, Nils.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nils. Very interesting project. I will now introduce the next speaker, which is Yaela Kolumbic. Yaela is a science communication researcher and a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Sydney, where she is the lead researcher on student and public participation in Breaking Good, a citizen science initiative that empowers members of the public to be active researchers in projects that improve human health. Yaela today will present a very interesting project that is using the power of the crowd to investigate the accessibility of medicine around the world. Please, Yaela, you can start.
Hi, thank you very much. So I'm very happy to be here. And I'm presenting on behalf of my colleagues from the Breaking Good team at Sydney University in Australia. And I'm going to be talking about investigating the world's most important medicines through citizen science. And our project aligns very quickly. Why isn't this going down? Okay. Links very, very closely with two of the SDG 3 targets. And I'm going to read just the parts that are highlighted here, which is to achieve access to safe, effective, quality, and affordable essential medicines. And related to that, to support research and development of vaccines and medicines, and in that way to provide further access to affordable essential medicines and vaccines. But there are so many medicines for so many diseases. So the question is, how do we define those medicines that are essential? And so luckily the World Health Organization has been discussing this for over 40 years, and they've compiled a list of medicines. There are over 450 medicines in that list. Of essential medicines, which are those that satisfy the priority needs, healthcare needs of the population. And these medicines should be available at all times in adequate amounts and affordable prices, and be in appropriate doses, assured quality, and adequate information. So this is a lot of A's, but together we say that these medicines need to be accessible. But we don't know, is that really the case? Well, unfortunately, there are many barriers to the access to medicines. And these include physical distance, which can be geographical challenges when people live in rural areas where they don't have the physical access to places of healthcare and to places to purchase important medicines. It can be a market incentive where there are few patients, so the manufacturing costs are expensive, and there's no incentive for pharmaceutical companies to manufacture, even discover or do research into additional medicines. And for the same reason, we have what we call price hikes, which are sudden increases in medicine prices that are also due to low profit margins, which make these medicines very unaffordable. And finally, there are societal challenges, which are connected to different public and political influences. So a good example for this is this medicine that you see here, hydrochloroquine, which I'm sure many of you have heard recently in the news, was actually an essential medicine that was first patented in 1955 for the treatment of malaria. But it was recently been suggested to be a good treatment for COVID-19. Well, unfortunately, the science data shows us that it's actually not effective for this treatment. But this didn't stop the huge surge in sales of this medicine. Now, this surge is problematic because many people rely on hydroxychloroquine for the treatment of autoimmune conditions. And this can cause problems with the supply of this medicine to people who really need it, not to mention the risks involved in taking unprescribed medicines, sorry. But perhaps even the biggest problem here for the accessibility of essential medicines is that we don't know the extent of the problem. The absence of transparency and information sharing means that efficient decision-making is affected. And when mutual learning is lacking, then there are limited opportunities for negotiating prices for medicines, for dissemination and distribution of these medicines, and to make them truly accessible for all. And so that is why we have launched Essential Medicines, which is a citizen science project for reviewing and gathering information on the availability and affordability of essential medicines for people around the world. Now, there is so much information out there about essential medicines, but it's scattered around. It's sometimes inconsistent, sometimes unreliable, and sometimes just really difficult to find. And so we want to gather all this information and bring it to one localized place where it can be accessible for everyone. And we do this by engaging the public in scientific and in health research, as I've described. And we really want to raise awareness and break down the barriers. And the barriers are the barriers for information and for the access to essential medicines, and recognizing that these two are really intertwined. And with this, we want to inform future drug discovery research. Part of it is conducted in our labs in Sydney University, but other drug discovery research around the world, and policy as well. And another important thing is that essential medicine works on open principles, open science principles, which means that all the information is publicly open and transparent, and the people are invited to help us with decision making, and we have community events and meetings where we open up the future directions of essential medicines to make joint decisions with the community. And so the way that essential medicine works is we have a number of different challenges, and each challenge asks people to provide information, different kinds of information about essential medicines, whether information found in the news, information about pricing. But what I want to discuss now, I don't have time to discuss all the challenges, is the last challenge here, the circle of life. The circle of life looks at the different life events that medicines have from the moment that they were discovered, patented, and through the different companies that own this medicine, manufactured it, etc. And so what's really interesting, and I will show this with one example for the medicine cycloserine, which is an antibiotic medicine for the treatment of tuberculosis. So cycloserine, it's sort of a standard example of a medicine that had a lot of different events throughout its life, and every event is not incredibly important or out of context, but when you combine these all together, then we can form some kind of story, understanding who the companies that own the medicines with time and what happens throughout the year. And more specifically, what is really important here, you can see this on the left box in green, is that what we found out through this challenge is that the cycloserine was actually price hiked. That's what I said before. It's meaning that the price has been raised. You can see here from $17 US to $350 US after the rights for the medicine were purchased by a different company. But even more interesting, perhaps, is that by intervention of a non-profit organization, the price was then reduced again, making it again accessible for different people. So I think this is a good example for what kinds of information we can aggregate together to actually understand the stories behind these medicines, and then to try and help and push for making these medicines accessible for people around the world. So thank you very much, and I'm going to invite you to come to our project and join the challenges and join the conversation and help us direct essential medicines to good places into the future.
Thank you, Yaela. You perfectly stick on time. Are there any questions for Yaela? There is Catherine that say it's also a huge problem with the insulin price in the USA. That's why the Open Insulin project evolved. But the big barrier right now is scaling up. GMP manufacturing and getting the proper certification. Then Lucia say, how can we move from the knowledge gathered to action? I don't know.
So one of the things that Essential Medicine is part of a larger project, which is called Breaking Good. And Breaking Good is a project that is involved in synthesis of new molecules. So the information from Essential Medicines feeds into Breaking Good, where we actually do some of the synthesis of these molecules that are important for future research and scan them for activity. And this is also all done with open source ideas and with the collaboration of citizen scientists. So this is how we in Breaking Good turn it into action. But I feel that by creating this database that is open for everyone, then different people can take it to different directions and use it for different causes.
Great, thank you. Xavier, are you going to introduce?
Yes, so thank you, Yaga, and we move now to the next presenter, Rosa Arias. Rosa is the Diagnosis Project Coordinator, the other creator and CEO and founder of Science for Change, and will present about the Diagnosis Project. So, Rosa, I don't see her.
Yeah, actually, Rosa is not here.
It's not connected. Well, she's trying to join, but it's not working. Maybe we can move to the next one and then give some time for Rosa to connect.
Yeah, Elisabetta, can you join the session? Okay, Elisabetta is here.
I have some problem with my camera, but...
Okay, so Elisabetta works as citizen science facilitator at the Center for Genomic Regulation and collaborates with the Citizen Science Office of the Barcelona City Council. And she will present an example of how to introduce citizen science and bring multidisciplinarity in genomic research institution. So please, Elisabetta, you can start.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very glad to be here and to have the opportunity to show you how we are working with this Genigma. Can you see the screen? Okay. Can you see? Hello, okay. Yes. While we're working on in Genigma project, so I'm speaking on behalf of my campaign and the CRG from Barcelona. So cancer is one of the world's largest health problems, and the number of people diagnosed with cancer is growing every year. So as you probably know, many cancer originate from changes in the genome. But the point is that humans are affected by more than 100 different types of cancer, and any cancer behaves different. So in this context, there is space for innovative solution and collective effort to the fight against cancer. The Genigma project is an experiment inside the big H2020 project, Orion Open Science. And the aim of this project is to design a methodology to obtain in a collaborative way the reference genome for any specific cancer. So why do we need this reference genome? Because with this information that is very relevant, we can design more effective and personalized cancer treatments. The Genigma project also have another aim, and is try to test if research organization in biomedicine can open up the way they usually do research, because citizen science is not usually a way they do their research. A project like this can be of support of different sustainable development goals, the good health for sure, but also other ones. And also the mission is one of the mission areas of the Horizon Europe. Let me show how we are working in this project. For this genome rearrangement, what we need is a cancer cell line that we obtain from the lab and a 3D genomic computational method. But also we need manual refinement. And this is the reason we want to have citizens on board. And we try to have them with a fundamental role from the very beginning and to give them participating in different parts of the research cycle. The idea is also we expect to collect very innovative solutions to solve this complex problem, facing people with different background and make them working together. We started with a very nice dialogue with the scientist and the gamer, and it took almost 3-4 meetings, very interesting, to align their language on this complex problem and see how finally they can speak about this from very different perspectives. After that, we organized 3 Cocreation events with more than 100 people to took the feeling, the needs, and the idea from people with different background, like gamers, science teachers, communication experts, patient association representative, medical doctors, also artists, and scientists from other fields. They were very interesting co-creation moments, and we got a lot of information of the need and the ideas that we used to make the first analogic version of our game. With this analogic version, we tested the game with a number of specialized gamers, and we test if the game was working, and with the input from these people, we test again our first digital version with science teachers, students, and general public in another public event. With all of this information, we are now developing the final version of the game, and in this moment we are in the point that we are creating the figure of citizen ambassadors to make alliance and focus group. We have person from the gamers field, one patient, and also science teacher, and we are working together with them for the communication of the game and also the feedback that we're expecting to have when they play, and all these things. We are even presenting with them the project in some event. So the game is under development, as I told you, and will be launched hopefully at the end of November this year. It will be a game for a smartphone in which citizens will analyze genome fragments from real cancer cells. And the idea is that many citizens will try to solve the same fragment until we arrive to a consensus on the solution. And then all these solutions will be merged together, and we will get the full assembly of the entire genome of a specific cancer. Our preliminary results show that players are really analyzing genome data set with a great accuracy and sometimes better than machine. As you probably can well distinguish the dog from the muffin. Think that not all the algorithms can do at detail. So we've seen how our player can well identify regions of the chromosome that are very difficult to distinguish from this algorithm that contain repetitive elements. So we are very happy with these preliminary results. So just to conclude my talk, some thought for the discussion. We were not still if our game will be successful or not, but for sure we believe that cancer research can be a benefit of citizen participation, because other citizen science project based on game have already demonstrated, like Cancer Research UK, that have several games in this field with 500,000 volunteers participating. What we have observed that's involving citizens from the very beginning, it's what increases really motivation, and in this way we are creating a community committed to the same mission. We also observed that citizen science is a very big challenge for fundamental life science, because scientists are not used to, and also because it's difficult to put into project arguments like biological molecular subject. So it is difficult, but you find a way. This is provoking cascading effect. We observed that several other scientists from other research centers are interested in this methodology, and so that can be an opportunity for the project sustainability. And the best experience was to see these cultural changes in both directions we observed, not only from the citizen side, but also from the scientific side. And it was the experience of, for sure, an opportunity for quality education. We work also on gender equality and inclusion, and for sure we are increasing the citizen trust on science with this kind of project. So thanks for your attention, and I present with this photo the Genigma team. We are working with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisabetta, for this interesting project. I really like the way in which you bring together all this variety of actors. And I would ask you if you have any recommendation on how you can actually bring together this actor and work with them.
We spent a lot of time looking for these people, and we try to reach them from their personal interest. And then we are happy because the response were really nice. So it's kind to have, I think that a good option is to have these ambassadors that help you, and in a way you have to go to this different community.
Yeah, great. And another question from the audience. Margaret said that she's curious if game designers and developers were also part of your co-creation community.
Yes, they participated. They are experts in doing this, but they participated to all the co-creations, and they also share their experience and keep the information from the citizens. So all this information would use to build the game. So the idea, we don't want to have the scientists designing the game. We wanted to have the people design it with the experts.
And another question from the audience. Gamification is great. How much do participants still learn about the science behind the game?
They don't have learned still, but we have prepared a lot of information that we have inside the game. So while they are playing, they will learn a lot about genomics, cancer, and open science also, because we have some educational content inside the game that they will discover while gaming.
Great. Thank you, Elisabetta. And we can now move to Rosa.
Okay, so Rosa Arias, who is the Gnosis project coordinator, other co-creator, CEO and founder of Science for Change. Rosa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and sorry for the delay. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. So today I'm going to talk about how odor pollution is affecting our health and well-being in communities, and how we are tackling this through citizen science in the Gnosis project. So what is odor pollution? It is the frequent and continuous exposure to ambient odors that causes annoyance on the population. It is the second cause of environmental complaints at a global level after noise, accounting for around 33% of the complaints when data is available. It's a subtype of air pollution, and it may indicate bigger environmental problems or sanitary issues. Usually, it does not represent serious health threats, since the odor detection threshold is usually lower than the occupational exposure limit to chemical substances. But anyway, it's not just nuisance. In fact, if you take a look at the press, there is always headlines highlighting complaints from communities affected by odor pollution from different emitting activities, and it always causes socioeconomic conflicts, usually because there is no regulation to protect the citizens. So this results in nuisance, but also in other health issues such as headache, lack of concentration, insomnia, stress, or breathing problems. And there is a research gap on this relationship between odors and health that we are addressing in the notice as well. So traditionally, odors are managed through two methodologies, different methodologies. One is olfactometry. The second one is field observations. But usually in these studies, there is no transparency, there is no communication with the citizens, and there is no access to the environmental information gathered. And also because of the lack, the usual lack of legislation, citizens are defenseless. So nobody is taking action in the communities affected by the pollution, the odor pollution. And also an opportunity for citizen science is that in all traditional studies, you need to use people to monitor the odors because our nose is the best sensor to measure the odors. So this is a big opportunity for us. And also in the current framework is not compliant with Principle 10 of Rio Declaration, that, as you may know, advocates for access to environmental information, citizen participation in local decision-making, and environmental justice. And this is something that we are trying to change. So why don't we change the paradigm? Why? What if citizens could map these odor observations through an app? Because our nose is the best sensor to measure odors. This was the idea behind our app, Odor Collect, that originated the DNosis project. And we are trying to provide this citizen empowerment to map the odors and to contribute to the SDGs. How? We are defining the research question that matters to the affected community with the citizens affected and the rest of the stakeholders. We are monitoring the odor pollution by creating collaborative odor maps, which are geolocalized real-time odor observations. And we are achieving the SDGs by changing behaviors of quadruple helix stakeholders and informing policies. This originated the DNosis project, and in fact, these are our goals. We are scientifically validating this new bottom-up methodology based on citizen science. We are monitoring, we are providing new sets of data to inform odor emitting activities and optimize industrial processes, thus reducing the impact over the population, the affected communities. And we are introducing the odor pollution in the policy agendas. In our approach, we are working with the quadruple helix model, which means that in all the communities where we are working, we always involve the local governments, the environmental authorities behind the issue, and also the other emitting industries, but also for sure the citizens and the citizens associations affected by the pollution and the experts. Our approach goes from national to local to global. This means that in the countries where we are working, we first start mapping affected communities at the national level. From there, we select the pilot, which means a municipality or several municipalities.
Rosa, you are muted. Now.
Now? But
yes.
It was all the time or just now?
No, just now.
So, okay, good. So I'll continue. I was saying that our approach goes from national to local to global because we first understand the situation in the countries. We map affected communities. This is an open map. Everybody can contribute. From there, we go to the local level. We select one community and we run our pilots there with the quadruple helix model and also using the extreme citizen science approach that Muki was explaining yesterday. And then we want to create replicability guidelines to apply the same methodology in other affected communities worldwide. This is our policy brief that you can also find in our webpage, which is also aligned with the SDGs. And this is our 10 pilot case studies. We are working in several countries across Europe, plus Chile and Uganda. And in all the case studies, we are defining, monitoring, and implementing at the local level with the potential contribution to the SDGs. This is our app. I invite you all to download it and just test it yourself. It's very simple to use, and anytime everybody can smell something in the streets, in their daily lives, they just need to take out their phones. Or we also work with smell diaries on paper if people are not used to technologies, for example, and you just need to add a new dot on the map, which means which type of odor you are perceiving, where it smells, and when. So with this, we build the collaborative maps that then we understand and analyze, etc., to try to understand when, what is causing the main pollution, and to try to reduce the impact on the population. So we are also running actions to inform policy making at the local level using this bottom-up approach and the quadruple helix model. So communities do not only have access to the environmental information, but they become data generators themselves through citizen science. And ideally, what we want is to promote new regulations at the municipal or the community level to protect the affected citizens. At the national level, we are also running a lot of policy science society dialogues to raise awareness and work towards the development of new other regulations. For example, in Spain, we have created a working group who is drafting a standard for using citizen science to monitor odor pollution that I know is the first standard that has in the title citizen science, which is a very nice achievement. And at the global level, we are running a lot of advocacy actions as well to introduce odor pollution in the policy agendas worldwide. For example, we are trying to introduce the word odor in the revision of the new directive for industrial protection and control. This is our alignment with the SDGs. We are not working in SDG 3, but in some others, such as gender, inclusivity, or sustainable cities. And in relation to the SDG 3, here you can see some of our targets where we can contribute to. But the important thing is that we are always working at the local level in a realistic scale. So we can include the local knowledge and we can adapt the targets and the indicators to the local context. And finally, we are also trying to cover this gap between the relationship between health and others, understanding how they can affect our health, especially in refineries, foundries, and landfills, who are the more likely to emit compounds that are worse for our health. And in this analysis, citizen science can also contribute. So that's all from my side. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Rosa. I note that Nora Salas, who is a co-author of Rosa, has been including a lot of useful links in the chat box to know more about the project. And we do have some questions from the audience. One is mentioning about if you have considered using dogs, since they have a very good sense of smell, if you have considered to include that part in your research.
No, because our sense of smell is really great. And what we are trying to understand is not the affectation of the others in dogs, but in people. So we really need to understand our perception. So we need the citizens, the affected citizens, and not the dogs in this case for doing the research.
Okay. And maybe another question related to the health link, the link of other with health. If you are experiencing problems because probably I guess that the people who are interested in the project that they want to participate are probably the ones that are more affected, and they may not be representative of the whole population. Have you thought about how to address those issues?
Yes, in fact, this is the first question when we address a community affected by this that they ask, is like, what I am breathing, is this affecting my health? But it's a question of education, I think. Because of their participation, we make them understand that the level of concentration of the odorants is very low, and they are not probably affected, that we are trying to measure the perception of the odors as a way to reduce the overall impact. And the bias that you can find it's very easy to detect in the data analysis. We are also correlating the other observations of the neighbors with meteorological data and dispersion modeling. So we correlate the origins of the observation with the other emitting activities. And sometimes it's very easy to see if an observation is a fake observation, let's say. But usually, because we work with the citizens very closely and in a lot of co-creation workshops, etc., they do not introduce fake observations in the affected communities, even though they are really affected by the issue.
Okay, thank you. There are some more questions in the chat box, but unfortunately we are out of time, so I think we'll have to close here. If you want to address those questions in the chat, maybe you can. So we would like to close by thanking especially all the speakers. We know that the presentations were very short, but we hope that they have sparked interest in your project. And we ask all the audience that is interested and they wanted to know more about the different projects. We encourage them to contact the authors. And well, I think that's it. I don't know, Valeria, if you want to add something.
No, thanks. Thanks everyone for being with us. We hope you enjoyed the session. Goodbye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.